Hey, the readers, the subscribers, Jody, they've been saying I've been too optimistic about this team. I think I've picked them. I didn't pick them against the Chiefs, but I picked them in their first 3 games. And
Okay.
I think
Spoiler.
Football Friday here on First 365. Nick McIntyre, John McMullen, and Jody McDonald, and a new contributor to Bird 365, making his debut appearance with us. John knows him well from the press box down at Lincoln Financial Field, but he's looking good here on Birds 365. Josh Tolentino, the Inquirer, joins us. Josh, thank you much for jumping aboard with us today.
Hey, J-Max Squared, I appreciate the opportunity to hop on top of the morning to you guys. We're just about, what day is it, John? Friday?
It is Friday. I always have to think about that myself. Yeah, you know how the days go together, Josh, and we'll be seeing each other in a couple hours, but before then, we'll spend a couple minutes together. I guess we'll start with the quarterback, Josh, because, one thing Jalen Hurts said this week about the Eagles offense is that we're close, numbers-wise. It certainly looks that way if in the context of the rest of the league. Your perspective, are they close offensively to sort of turning a corner?
I don't necessarily think that they're as close as he says or believes. I think we saw the offense in particular take a step forward last week, which was really, I think, the biggest talking point or question mark going, off a very rough week down at Dallas. I mean, it seemed like nothing was working at all for the offense besides garbage time. I mean, yeah, they showed some signs of improvement, and I think Nick Sirianni is still figuring out Jalen Hurts the same way that Jalen Hurts is figuring out Nick Sirianni. I think John, you, me, and others in the press box early on in the season, there were times where, we're seeing some plays, particularly against the Niners, where it's like Jalen Hurts is that quarterback, right? Like, this isn't Phillip Rivers, this isn't Andrew Luck, but it looked like, these would be play calls designed for a quarterback like the ones we just mentioned and not Jalen Hurts. So I think that, again, I think these struggles and learning each other, the chemistry definitely between not just Jalen and his receivers, but straight up just Nick and, forget about the personnel just for a moment, but just Nick figuring out Jalen and what he likes. I think, it was going to take some time. So are they close? They're closer than where they were a couple weeks ago. But again, I think those are important conversations that Jalen needs to have with, continue to have with Nick Sirianni. But again, we're only talking about one aspect of the team here. I mean, they're just, very undisciplined in many other facets. And, at least they're at least showing signs of fixing the offense. And it's that starts obviously with Jalen Hurts.
Josh, I'm going to ask a very narrow focused question. When they took the field against the Chiefs and had their first offensive possession on Sunday, Jason Kelly gets over the ball and he looks to his left and he looks to his right and he says, "Where the hell are my guys?" He's out there lone wolfing it with the 4 other backups. Now, my opinion, they played pretty damn well last week, across the board. The offensive fill-in guys did their jobs and then some. I know it's a percentage breakdown question, but above and beyond the players themselves, and we tip our hats to all of them, who should get credit for them having the type of game that they did? The offensive coordinator, who was calling the plays with the help of Nick Sirianni, who's the head coach, who's in charge of everybody? Is it Stoutland, the offensive line coach, who gets these guys up and ready and prepped and the like? Is it Howie Roseman, who actually gave the team a pretty good amount of depth on the offensive line that they could pull off the kind of thing that they pulled off? Break down the credit for the offensive line playing well last week the way it should be.
Yeah, I think if we're picking one person, and this is something that I've learned quickly on this beat, you got to point the finger to Stoutland. I mean, you look at the development that he's really across the board with, let's use his biggest success project, Jordan Mailata, who, didn't play last week. It looks like, he might play this week after returning to practice. But, I mean, right there, it's like you find a gem in the rough right there. Then, but, if we're talking about Stoutland, I think one conversation in particular that I remember this week is that I think it was Jack Driscoll or Nate Herbig actually probably both of them. Just in speaking with them, finding out how they found out before the game that they were going to be starting, obviously with
Yeah.
Lane Johnson dealing with his personal matter. It's like, just from a logistics perspective, how do they find out? You know, is it Nick coming up to them before the game? Is it a text? And it actually turned out to be a call from Jeff Stoutland. So I think just that narrative right there points that Stoutland is really in control of this room. And John, you know, I love to watch those battles in the trenches, those one-on-ones in practice between O-line, D-line, O-line. And one thing that, you know, again, a very quick observation I've made is Stoutland is very hands-on with his teaching, and he's basically right there in your ear. And that's kind of the approach that's worked with that group specifically.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing, Josh. And you look at it, they're going into Carolina this week. That's a team that's having some injury issues on the offensive line. They got to pick up the phone. They're calling around the league to try to find offensive linemen. The Eagles are going up to guys 2 hours before the game and saying, okay, Jack Driscoll, you're going to play right tackle now. Nate Herbig. It is pretty impressive the way Jeff Stoutland gets these guys ready. And they're not Lane Johnson, they're not Brandon Brooks. So you're taking a big hit, but you can put a competent product on the field. And that's my segue, Josh, because what hasn't been competent is the penalty issue and the discipline issue you mentioned a little bit. Penalties are up all across this league, but Eagles are down at the bottom of the league. So even when you put it in that context, is it just a young coaching staff? Is it just undisciplined nature? What's your perspective? Why so many yellow flags on the Philadelphia Eagles?
John, right before I hopped on, you know, I just, you know, it's become almost a daily tradition to gauge at the weekly or the league penalty stats. I think they have 16 or 17 pre-snap penalties. There are two teams in the league with 15 penalties overall. So I mean, we're talking about a very those are penalties that you can control. That you know, it comes down to IQ and fundamentals, two things that are actually in Nick Sirianni's basically his Bible or his you know, teaching principles, his 5 what he calls it core fundamental values. I mean, they've got this printed on shirts. They've got it all over the locker room. You know, obviously inside the practice facility. You and I have seen that, John. And it just seems that they're a very undisciplined team right now. And you point to you know, several different things. And you know, John and I have obviously had conversations with those around the team. I think there are a couple of contributors. I think you look at the top. Obviously, Nick Sirianni is a first-year head coach, and not just him, but a very young coaching staff, as you mentioned, John. I think it starts there, but then you look at the personnel and the players who are in there, mainly the players who, I guess, who are committing these penalties. And then you got to consider again, and then John, I know you've enjoyed asking about this throughout the week. The illegal man downfield. I mean, that seems like has definitely contributed to a lot of them, and not just that, but it's been a point of emphasis. But if it's a point of emphasis, guess what, Andre Dillard, you've got to. And I know we're talking about a guy who used to play tight end, but you've got to definitely adjust. And he's been a main factor to a lot of those calls. So, and again, we're talking about a guy who wasn't really expecting to start. It was kind of just thrown in there a couple of weeks ago. But I think those are the 3 main things: are definitely the players involved, the young coaching staff, and the emphasis across the league on penalties.
All right, Josh, going to make you make a call again where the answer is a little column A, little column B, little column C, but put the one on top of the pile for me. The Eagles' inability to stop the run the last 2 weeks. We know it's the players mostly, but I want to ask you them in groups. Is it the down defensive linemen? Is it the linebackers? Is it the safeties? Is it Jonathan Gannon and his non-existent system, but just putting guys in the right place to make plays? Oops, not enough of that. Of those 4, which one would you point the finger of guilt most at?
You know, Jody, when I got here, I really was kind of taken aback by Jonathan Gannon, and I really enjoyed all the conversations that he's had with us, and I really do think that he can be a successful coach in this league. And his teaching philosophies I'm really high on. But these past couple weeks, and most especially last week, there were just so many eye raising, shoulder shrugging type questions when you look at the personnel that's on the field. I think at least three, just looking back at the tape and the play script, at least three of the touchdowns that the Patrick Mahomes directed down there in the red zone. On three of those calls, they had their backup defensive lineman. And again, obviously a lot of thought and goes in, a lot of talking goes into these decisions with Jonathan Gadden, the coaching staff, and then obviously the players. But they're trotting out Teron Jackson. I mean, Milton Williams, a rookie, Ryan Kerrigan, who he's basically committing highway robbery with his what he's done here coming to Philadelphia in his production. We want to talk about Fletcher Cox and his absence in the stat sheet. Fletcher Cox is better than all four of those, and what is he doing on the sideline in those moments? I think if we're going to put blame here, yeah, a little bit on the personnel, but I think you look at the team, there are probably like 40, 45 guys who you could say are on an NFL roster. I think this is definitely one of the teams where it's a lot of back end guys where you wouldn't really see them on 31 of the other rosters. But if you had to circle one guy, Jody, I think I'm pointing to Jonathan Gannon. I think he's, again, in the process, kind of like Nick with Jalen, like what we mentioned at the top. I think he's just figuring out personnel and continuing to implement a scheme that guys are adjusting to.
Now, Josh, in a lot of ways, I think Jonathan has it a little bit tougher than Nick, and I want to run this by you real quick. Nick is dealing with the core of an offense with very young players, and that Jalen Hurts, obviously, essentially a rookie quarterback, second-year guy, first-time starter. You have Devontae Smith, first-round pick. Obviously, you have second-year wide receivers and Jalen Reagor, Quez Watkins. Some veteran guys at tight end, the offensive line, but the playmakers, even Miles Sanders, very young player, Kenny Gainwell. On the defensive side of the football, you got Fletcher Cox. Brandon's hurt, obviously, now, so we'll take him out of the picture. Darius Slay, the two guys I want to focus on because they both spoke this week, and I saw a little inkling of, I do this well. Why aren't I doing this? Did you get the same feeling? 4-eye technique, which most football fans don't know about. Fletcher Cox don't want to play that, Josh. Darius Slay wants to play some man coverage.
Yeah, as Fletcher Cox was kind of talking, I kind of gauged just to my left a little bit to see what the PR staff, how they were reacting to what he was saying. Because obviously, I think he would have been well prepped for those types of conversations and those types of questions. And Fletcher Cox, I mean, he's a staple within this city and on this organization. His mark will be here forever. He knows the impact that he's had on this franchise and will continue to have. He also knows he has a voice and that he's not even if they say, try to avoid this type of conversation, that he's going to say what is on his mind. And we're 4 games in, and you can definitely see that you mentioned an inkling. I think it was a little bit more of an inkling. I mean, I think he is frustrated with where he's put. And that's basically what he said, is that it's hard to adjust to doing one thing when you're used to doing the other thing, and you have to do both within a game. So I'm really glad you pointed that out, John, because I was definitely not the. It shows that wasn't the only one to notice that Fletcher Cox is obviously not necessarily upset with the scheme, but having these early struggles grasping the fact that he has to play 4-eye and not stay in the 3.
Josh, I want to ask
real quick, Jody. I wanted to get a follow-up in because I remember when John Harbaugh left Philadelphia and he got the Baltimore job, and he thought to himself, the first thing I got to do is get Ray Lewis and Ed Reed on my side. That's if I get those guys to buy in, everybody else buys in. If I'm Nick Sirianni, if I'm Jonathan Gannon, and Nick from the head coaching perspective, on the defensive side of the football, I got to get Fletcher Cox and Darius Slay to buy in. Then everybody else follows. Am I wrong there? Is that what Jonathan Gannon should be trying to do?
No, I think you have a great point, John. And maybe in a couple of weeks, we're looking at maybe the Vegas game or the Detroit game. A very important game to Darius Slay. Maybe by then we're seeing them run a little bit more, not necessarily changing the scheme up, but um, you know, adjusting a little bit to player tendencies. Maybe we do see Darius Slay play a little bit more man later in the season, or the corners in general. I know, obviously, we've learned that, and they played a lot of two deep cover two last week, but they are a zone heavy scheme. I think one thing that they really have to figure out, though, and as we watch tape, and as coaches and players watch tape, they like to say that there are other beneficiaries of Fletcher Cox's absence in regards to his production on the stat sheet. And yeah, that might be true a little bit. You look at Javon Hargraves having the best year of his life. Other guys are getting one-on-one opportunities. John, Jody, it's not like every single play Fletcher Cox is getting doubled. I mean, he's definitely having his opportunities. It's just you look at where he's playing and what he's used to. I think they really have to figure out Fletcher Cox, because not only is the highest paid player, I think he's definitely still one of the most talented guys on that defense. And as you mentioned, a leader, a captain, a veteran guy. They have to figure out Fletcher Cox's situation for sure.
I want to jump over to the other side of the ball with you for a second, Josh. This past game against Kansas City was the first time in 4 games that, although he got more touches, and we question how many touches he just gets in general, but Miles Sanders actually was less productive than Kenny Gainwell, who got less touches. The difference between them a little bit closer than ever before, and Gainwell had a good game. Are we reading in too much that the breakout between those guys, first back, second back, is now more like 1 and 1A? And could 1 and 1A flip in the next couple of weeks if what transpired last week continues as far as production goes with the Eagle backs?
Well, I think the biggest question, Jody, was coming off that Dallas game is how many touches is Miles Sanders going to get? And then you mentioned what we just saw from both him and Gainwell. Man, that's a really tough question, Jody. I covered the Dolphins last year, and Kenny Gainwell was one of the running backs I studied a lot of tape on. I watched a lot of his college film, and it feels like the Eagles definitely got a steal there in the 5th round. I mean, his production just through 4 games speaks for itself. So I think Gainwell definitely deserves the ball. I think you talk about the distribution of the two. I think Gainwell is definitely going to be deserving in that conversation, but there's obviously no denying what Miles has done in his 2 years in the league, and his impact on what he's done here in previous seasons. But I think a more important conversation to be had, and this can be skewed a little bit because they were playing Kansas City and they kind of knew that they had to score a bunch of points last week, and that was also their thought process heading into Dallas. I'm very curious how they're going to approach Carolina's defense, a very good passing defense. They got to give Miles Sanders the ball more. Not just that, they have to run the ball more. Up until the 4th quarter, I believe, John, Jody, last week, the Eagles were 1 of 4 in the red zone. I think they finished with 2 garbage time touchdowns. But up until that point, they were 1 of 4. And in those 4 red zone opportunities, if you look back at the play script, they only ran the ball like 2 or 3 times. And we're talking about in the red zone where you need to be running the ball. And I know a lot of fans, they want to talk about the offensive line and, the backups of the backups were in there. But if you look back, John, Jody, at Kenny Gainwell's touchdown, he had a 7-yard scamper into the end zone. The blocking was perfect on that play. So why aren't they running the ball more, especially in that part of the field? So, again, another great point, Jody, and not just the distribution of the two. I think just in general, Nick Sirianni needs to be dialing up some more run plays, and I think he will against Carolina. These past 2 games, they knew they had to score points. They knew they were going to pass the ball. I'd expect a more balanced offense, but again, we'll have to see on Sunday in Carolina.
Let's talk about Sunday in Carolina. Josh, put your Nick Sirianni hat on, put your Jonathan Gannon hat on. This Carolina team, I think, has played better than most of us expected. Sam Darnold getting away from Adam Gase, DJ Moore, Billy Kidd having a big year. That defense gets after you from a pressure standpoint. How do you attack the Carolina Panthers? They, schedule-wise, they've beaten the Jets, the Texans. So maybe they don't look, maybe they aren't quite as good as that 3-1 record looks, but certainly a competent team.
Oh, definitely. They're even a more competent team if the guy who returned to practice this week, Christian McCaffrey, ends up playing. Honestly, I'd be surprised if they, in a way, rushed him back. But I was kind of caught aback. I think it was yesterday, John, Thursday, that he, the day he returned to practices, that he spoke to reporters and told them he's feeling really, really good. So he might be feeling really, really good. But we've seen in situations, where coaches are slow to hold players back. You look at Rodney McLeod situation this year, recovering from his injury. And, that's just one instance. But again, I'd be surprised if they saw Christian McCaffrey. But again, a way more potent offense with him back there. But even without him back there, they're a very sound group, both offensively, defensively. They've got some key injuries on defense. And I think if you're going to focus there just for a second, segueing from our last conversation, they have to run the ball. I mean, this is a team without one of their top corners, and Stephon Gilmore obviously won't be eligible to play, and Shaq Thompson, one of their top producing linebackers, it looks like he's going to miss the game. They have to run the ball, especially when they know that this Carolina defense, they're very fundamentally sound in the passing game, and you're talking about a guy in Jalen Hurts who took a step forward, and you want to continue to see him take step forwards. I don't know if he's going to necessarily be able to do that against this Carolina defense. I'm very curious to see Nick Sirianni's opening play call script, and I think what we've learned, John, is that I don't know if Ocean or any of these casinos around here in this region have this type of prop bet, but they should start making a prop bet where first play is going to be a screen or the over-under.
Oh, yeah. Bubble screen to Quez Watkins.
The over-under on
problem.
Screens.
Yeah.
I think a good number for that would maybe be 5.5, 6.5, because they love to run those plays and get these quick outlet guys. And so Jalen Hurts and the offense, they're definitely in for a test. But how can they get through that test? Run the ball.
Yeah, Quez is a little banged up, so I'm going to go Jalen Reagor this week. Bubble screen to Jalen Reagor. That's my problem.
Jalen Bubbles. Got Tolentino, a guy after our own heart, making up his own lines here with us on Birds 365. We love it. John mentioned the fact that DJ Moore, Philly kid, could be a pain in the Philadelphia rear end this week. So could another Philly guy, Hassan Reddick, who way back when we started the show, he was a free agent that I said, I know the Eagles are okay at defensive end, and he's going to get paid like a starting defensive end, but it might be worth putting that kind of money into a defensive end and bring a homeboy home. He ended up with his homeboy coach down in Carolina, but how big a problem does Hassan Reddick show for the Eagles coming up against that revamped offensive line this weekend?
Yeah, definitely. And you talk about the offensive line. It doesn't look like Lane Johnson is going to play. I mean, he's obviously missed practice all week. They're going to have a walkthrough today at the stadium. He's the type of pro where, in his instance, if he wanted to play, they would definitely trot him out there. Just everything he's been through in his career. But it looks like they're going to be without him. You look across the offensive line, and all the backups that are in there. Could they cause issues? I think so, Jody. And you look at what about last week? They played very well against the Chiefs, and the offense was able to put up all those points. They were playing the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs, they're known for their offense. They're known for Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill. That was a very sloppy defense, and a lot of people like to point. Oh, what about the Honey Badger? Honey Badger ain't playing front seven. I mean,
he's not getting after the QB.
Yep. That Kansas City front, besides Chris Jones, really, who really wasn't much of an impact at all. They really weren't making any type of noise. Jalen definitely had time to throw the ball, and he definitely did damn near 50 pass attempts. But again, how can you maneuver through that type of situation where there's constant pressure on the edges against your backup tackles? Miles Sanders, Kenny Gainwell. I think if Miles Sanders doesn't get 10 touches this week, John, have me back next week, and we're gonna go.
10 touches. It seems like such a little amount, 10 touches, but if we get there, that's an improvement for Miles Sanders. I agree with you. Got to get the football to your playmakers, Josh. Josh, I want to thank you. I want to get you on record first, but I want to tell everyone to read joshinquirer.com. Does a great job covering this team with Jeff McClain, our buddy there, EJ Smith. You got Mike Sealski, Marcus Hayes, who come on this show. So thrilled to have you. We are going to have you back, but I want to give me a score. You got to do it on these types of things. Eagles, Panthers, who wins it?
I really do think that they're capable of upsetting the Panthers at home, especially if we see more of what Jalen Hurts and how Nick Sirianni orchestrated to his strengths in the passing game. But I just think that the defense raised so many questions over the past 2 weeks, giving up, I think, 82, 83 combined points, John. I think there are just too many question marks there, the safe bet. And I think I wrote this yesterday. The points might be off, but I think I'll go 27-24 Carolina. If the Eagles upset them, I wouldn't be surprised. But again, if you're making a bet here, I think we got to go the Panthers in a slim margin.
Josh, if the Eagles win this week, you'll never be on Birds 365 again. No.
Hey, the readers, the subscribers, Jody, they've been saying I've been too optimistic about this team. I think I've picked them. I didn't pick them against the Chiefs, but I picked them in their first 3 games. And
okay.
Spoiler alert, Josh. This will be the first time I picked the Eagles all season. I didn't even pick them in Atlanta.
Okay.
So I'm on the negative side.
Okay, I think it's a winnable game, and they're definitely going to need it on a short week, the week ahead with Tampa Bay and Tom Brady coming to town. So, again, wouldn't be surprised if it was an upset, but I'm going to go Carolina here, John.
And, oh, by the way, I picked Eagles to lose the 3 losses they had, and they haven't kicked me off Birds 365 either. So, Josh, we appreciate, A, your contribution, B, your pick. We'll see if it's right or wrong. We're not going to hold it against you either way. Thank you very much for coming on with us today.
Hey, Jody, if we're right, we'll be at Ocean making these player prop bets and suggestions.
The creative prop bet by Josh Tolentino here with us on Birds 365. Thanks much, Josh. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Mac and Mac guys coming back. We got more Eagles, Panthers breakdown for you next hour. Mike Garafolo, the NFL Network, is going to hop aboard here on Birds 365.